Good evening, everybody. My name is Nico Papakostadis, and I have the honor and the privilege of serving on the Select Board, presently as the chair. And thank you all for coming out this evening. This is something that the Select Board had as a goal-setting initiative earlier in the year, that we wanted to resume having all board meetings, preferably twice a year. And we had the first sometime late spring. This is our second. We want to build on what we heard from you with the first one. We put together a PowerPoint presentation. We're going to go through how to run a meeting etiquette, so forth and so on. 91A, there's a 91A training in this room, Mr. Dean?
Yes.
This room next Wednesday that the NHMA is putting on, so we would, hopefully everybody's schedule would permit them to come to that. But thank you all for volunteering on your respective boards and committees. Thank you for the service that you provide to the town, service that you provide to town staff and the board. We appreciate your time, we appreciate your commitment, and we're certainly cognizant of your time this evening, so we do want to keep this to no more than 90 minutes or less. So with that, I would ask everybody could just go around real quick. We could start with Nancy. Just introduce yourself and what board you're on. Thank you.
I'm on the Select Board and the representative to the Planning Board, Housing Advisory Committee, and Conservation Commission. Nancy Belanger.
Details.
I knew, but
We know you, but that's
thank
right.
you.
I'm Pam Jedham, and I'm on Historic District, Heritage, and Housing Authority.
I'm Wayne Plummer, and I'm on the planning board.
Hi, I'm Laura Davies. I'm on the zoning board.
I'm Richard Huber, and I am on the River Advisory Committee.
And I'm Stephanie Marshall, and I'm on the Community Power Aggregation Committee, which is phasing out at the end of December, and just joined the Energy Committee.
I'm Teresa Page. I'm on the Zoning Board.
I'm Martha McEntee. I'm on the Communications Advisory Committee.
Christopher Zigmont. I'm on Sustainability Advisory Committee and Budget Recommendation Committee.
Julie Gilman, Select Board. I am a representative on the Historic District Commission, the Heritage Commission, the Energy Committee.
Don't forget Facility Advisory.
Facility Advisory, thank you. I think that's it this year.
Leon Atzelis, I'm the newest trustees of the trust funds.
Dwayne Staples, I'm Swayze Parkway trustee.
Chris Weeks, I'm on the Facility Advisory Committee.
Andrew Koff, I'm on the Conservation Commission.
Michelle Crapo, Conservation Commission.
Bob Kelly, Chair of the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee and Budget Recommendations Committee.
I'm John Crowley. I'm one of the supervisors of the checklist. I'm not on the committee.
Not yet.
All right, is that everybody? Very good. So, no. Hey, Vicky's here. All right. Welcome.
Thank you. Sorry, late.
So we, first of all, I'd just like to say I'm Rusty, Town Manager, for those of you who haven't seen me around. Many of you have, and so you know me already. But I also wanted to echo what Nico said, which is this group is a very important group in our town government. We cannot function without our boards, committees, and commissions. We're very volunteer-centered. So I just wanted to also thank you for your service to the town. I can't say how important it is, and it's great to have you all here. So thank you very much for all you do for us. I appreciate it. So we developed a public meeting etiquette best practices slide, and we're going to just jump into this and talk about some of the public meeting etiquette. The hope is that people take the sheet away with them tonight and be able to refer to it, both at home and at meetings. And we developed this somewhat organically, and it came from just things that we've experienced with boards and committees at a staff level. So the idea is that hopefully this will help you out and it will also help us out. So we'll start with meeting postings. All meetings must be posted within 24 hours in advance of the meeting. That excludes Sundays and legal holidays. And this is a firm requirement under RSA 91A2-2. And just to add to that, staff are typically not available weekends and holidays to post meetings. So staff really need to give several days' notice in order to post your meetings effectively. So we would just ask that the boards and committees adhere to that. Next is canceled meetings. EXTV should always be informed of a meeting cancellation. We've got Bob Glowacki here. Bob, raise your hand. Thank you, Bob. You can contact, as board chairs, you can contact Bob via phone or email, and chairs of boards and committees have this responsibility. Sometimes it's not clear who is the one responsible for canceling the meetings, but it is the chair of the board that should be taking that initiative. So one-on-one meetings with the chair and new board members. Board chairs should meet with new members one-on-one to discuss board practices, current issues, and rules of the road. So that's something we really want to see. We want to see the board chairs taking the initiative to meet with their new members. Subcommittees and task forces are covered by RSA 91A, and the reference here is just to see the statutory definition. If there's ever a question about whether you are an official subcommittee or not, you can contact our office and ask the question, and we'll help you with guidance on that particular issue. Next, we have conflict of interest. Sometimes when you serve on a board or committee, you may have an issue come up that gives rise to a conflict of interest. First thing is to be very conscious of that and understand that those kinds of issues can get into the board's practice and come up based on issues that come up. The important thing is that you evaluate everything that you do in the course of business as whether or not you have a conflict of interest to identify that. And if not, that's fine. But if you do, you really should be recusing yourself from any issues on which you have a conflict. So that's an important notion to have when you're serving on the board. Yes, Nico.
Could you just go into the difference between abstaining and recusing yourself from a vote or a discussion?
Yeah, so abstaining means partaking in the discussion and abstaining on a vote on a particular topic. Outright recusal is stepping down from the issue entirely. So you're basically stepping away. That's normally represented by you'd remove yourself from the position of a board member physically and sit in the audience. Okay. So that's the difference between abstaining and recusal. Yes, Julie?
Yeah, I'd just like to, for you to understand that a conflict of interest is when a matter comes before you in which you're affected more greatly than the general public. So like I'm an abutter to a property going before the ZBA. I would step down from that case at the ZBA. I would recuse myself.
I have a question as a kind of a follow-up to that. If there is a conflict of interest, say it's an abutter, do you start from a position of sitting with the general public in the audience, or do you start in your seat as a member and announce your recusal? What's the best procedure for making it clear that that's what you're doing?
So I don't know that there's a clear-cut answer to that.
Best practice would be to sit at the meeting as a member of the board and get the introductions done, et cetera, and when that case comes up, then you formally announce that you are recusing yourself from that case because I'm a butter or they're my friend or something like that. Could be awesome.
And I'd just say there might be another instance where a board has been assigned to a particular evening of business, like the zoning board, for example. And if you were going to step down, it depends if you're going to step down for the entire night, right? That would be one thing. But if you're just doing it for one case, like Julie said, starting out on the board, then recusing yourself and then coming back is the better method.
So if you weren't participating in any of the decisions that evening, you could start from...
You could start from the audience, yeah.
Makes sense.
All right, so meetings. Sometimes we don't know when meetings are shown, and our meetings are shown live on YouTube. How many have seen YouTube meetings or watched the boards on YouTube? Great. And then meetings are also available on the Roku channel. Anybody watch us on the Roku channel at all? Okay, just one. And they're also available on the town website, so hopefully everybody has had access to all their board and committee meetings to be able to watch those.
On the town website, there's a delay before they're posted? Is that correct or no?
Nope, they should be posted actually before the meeting happens. So you just go to, I'll cover that a little bit later today.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's all, those are all items before the meeting. Now we get into during and within the meeting. The first one, We're going to start with sidebars. So we want to avoid sidebars during meetings. The microphones are live and can often pick up sidebar conversations. And what happens is, unfortunately, because I know people like to talk, but what happens is the microphones can pick up conversations, and then the sidebar actually becomes part of the meeting. We actually had this happen back in 2011 at a town meeting that involved a pretty contentious issue regarding the election of a budget committee in the town. And unfortunately for us, that there were some sidebars during that meeting that got picked up by the microphones that were then used in a court, as part of that case. So it goes to show you just how serious that can be. So you want to limit your sidebars to zero. That's the best way to do it, is just to not have them. So we want to address that. And the other thing is keeping microphones away from papers and keyboards. So we have had issues in the past where people have, and I have paper in front of me at the meeting, so I totally get this, I understand it. And we want to keep paper away from the microphones. That's important. And also, if you have a laptop and you're using a laptop in a meeting and there's a microphone nearby, then the keying of the laptop will be picked up by the microphone. So that's another thing that you want to try to avoid as much as possible. So that's sidebars. Document referrals. So the chair of each committee should alert people at home when they're referring to a document they're in possession of and speaking to at a meeting. So sometimes as a board member, you'll be presented with information at a meeting, you'll have it in front of you. It's a good idea to let the public know what it is that you're referring to, so they have a notion of what you're actually talking about. So that's a document referral piece. And then we covered the difference between abstaining and recusing, so I'll skip over that one. Texting during meetings. This is another sensitive area, and this is to be generally avoided. You should know that any text sent or received during a regular meeting could be considered discoverable under a 91A request, and they become part of the official meeting. So if you've had text messages back and forth during meetings, you know that. So I'll put a little bit of an asterisk on that and say that in a court of law, a judge would probably review it in terms of whether the text message was, I'm going to bring milk home to my wife or something like that, and then probably remove that out of the picture. But anything that's town business related that has to do with the meeting itself would become discoverable under a 91A issue. So that's something to be very sensitive to. And like I said, just best practices to avoid texting during meetings whenever possible. So then we get to how to open and close a meeting. At the beginning of the meeting, you want to call the meeting to order when you're the chair. And at the end of the meeting, you need to entertain a motion to adjourn, and that requires a second. And declare the meeting adjourned after the vote is taken to adjourn. So that's something, again, we kind of take that for granted, but it's not always clear. So hopefully everybody's clear on that, and we have motions to adjourn and then calling meetings to order by the chair. It's always a good idea to introduce the board to at the meeting after you call it to order. And then how to make a motion and take a vote. Again, it seems simple. Raise your hand. I move that, and then the motion follows. The motion always requires a second, and then a call for discussion on the motion. I've chaired a lot of meetings where sometimes we forget to ask for discussion, and that's it. If you go through a voting process, you call for a first and then a second. Always call for discussion on the motion, and then once the discussion stops or there is no discussion, the chair takes the vote of the body. So that's how that should work. And then the last thing is how a public hearing differs from a meeting. So public hearings are typically a regulatory process that's outlined in state law and also in state law, and basically lay out when you need to have a public hearing on something. Sometimes people ask, well, do I need to have a public hearing on this? You need to have a public hearing if the law says you have to have a public hearing. Otherwise, you don't. But in order to have a public hearing, there's a process that you should follow, and that's to open the public hearing, take public input, close the public hearing, and then deliberate as a board on the issue at hand and make any decisions that you need to make on that particular topic. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. So just wanted to cover that. And I think that was everything I had for before the meeting and within the meeting. Any questions from anybody about any of this so far? Pretty self-explanatory.
Could you explain
Nancy?
a little bit more on the taking the vote and when a roll call vote is required versus not a roll call?
So roll call vote, if somebody is not physically present in the room at the meeting, if they're zooming in for, as an example, all votes need to be taken by roll call. That has to happen in that fashion. So that sometimes happens. I think when you go into, and when you enter into a non-public session, all votes have to be done via roll call vote. And then when you're exiting the non-public session, roll call vote. So.
And by roll call, each person is named and then votes? Is that what you mean? Or just...
Yes. Yeah.
Or you're asking each person.
All right. So I'm going to turn it over to Bob. And Bob's going to talk to you about the technical pieces of Zoom and all that fun stuff.
Hello, everybody. In case you don't know me, I'm Bob Glowacki, the Media Communications Coordinator for the town. Most of what I do, or a lot of what I do, is with Exeter TV. So in case you didn't know what that was, Exeter TV has 3 channels. The town is responsible for public access channel, which is channel 6 on Comcast. Blue Hawk Media is run by the high school, which is channel 8. And the government channel, which most of your meetings are filmed and broadcast live on, is channel 22. As Russ mentioned before, you can watch on Comcast cable channels. Also, I believe if you have the streaming app with Comcast, you can watch everything or a lot of things live or on demand on YouTube. As well as Exeter NH.TV, our website. And if you have Apple TV or Roku apps, you can search Exeter TV, Town of Exeter, and find a lot of on-demand and live content there as well. The most important question I get is, like, where can I find my meeting? So kind of disregard everything I just said about where you can watch our stuff. And for you guys, the easiest thing you can do is go to the town website, where your agendas and minutes are posted. And there's this little section over here. This is where your agendas are. You have other attachments, your packets, and the video link is right here. So right from this website, exeternh.gov/meetings, you can find video links. And we try to publish these the Friday before, like, for the whole next week. So if there's 5 meetings that week, we'll have the 5 links ready to go. So you can even go to YouTube if you are a YouTube watcher at home, and you can hit a bell to get notified when it goes live. So some tips on how to use microphones. I've seen a lot of different ways to use microphones in the last couple of years. So one, don't is speaking too far away from the microphone. A good thing in the Novak room is we have speakers in there that are amplifying your voice, and even for me, it's weird hearing myself. But if you can't hear yourself, you're not speaking close enough to the microphone. So try to avoid that. Also, not facing the microphone when speaking. I know that's really tough because of the way the microphones are on the board tables, and you often are having conversations with each other. But as much as you can, kind of glue your face to the microphone and then turn your head to the side to talk to the board members in that way. We're making sure that we're doing that. And Russ mentioned it before, but I know a lot of the land use boards have a lot of papers and stuff. As best as you can, try to just avoid hitting the microphone, but especially the tip, which is where all the sound is. But understand if that can't be avoided sometimes with some of the giant maps you guys are looking at. So the do's, try to speak within 1 to 4 inches of the microphone. You don't have to talk loud, but just talk in a normal voice. Point your mouth towards the microphone, and keep papers away from the microphone and the stand. hybrid meetings. It's the thing, we're still doing for a lot of boards, especially in the Novak room. It is sort of possible in the Wheelwright room, but that would be like a special request if you guys needed someone to attend remotely if they're sick or, out of town, something like that. We can probably set it up. If you need to set up a hybrid meeting, you can just contact me. That's my email, rglowacki@exeternh.gov, or you can just find me on the town website. And I would also say, like, CC whoever your staff contact is, whether it's Pam or if you have a certain person with the town you work with for your board, like in the planning department or something. That way they're aware as well. If you're attending a meeting remotely, some tips, if I was attending remotely myself, I'd keep myself muted at all times, and I'd actually keep my video off, even if I'm, was on the board, because the way it works, if this was the Novak room and you were on Zoom, if you're on video, even if you're not speaking, you're going to be a big face on the screen for everyone in the room. So if you don't want to be watched by everyone in the room, just keep your video and mic muted and the video off, and then turn those on when it's time to speak. That'll also minimize any feedback or distractions during the meeting. The other thing is just when you're calling into a radio station to do an interview or something, you don't listen to the radio while you're on the phone with them because it would cause some feedback. So if you're an avid Exeter TV viewer while you're attending a meeting remotely, turn off Exeter TV. It's okay to not watch for a little bit while you're doing Zoom because it will have some feedback. For the chairs who are maybe thinking about how do I host the Zoom during the meeting, you don't have to handle any of the technical stuff. My staff does a great job doing that all behind the scenes. We'll handle muting and unmuting the public and all that kind of stuff. We also send the invites to the panelists. So if your board member or let's say, a consultant or an applicant or something needs to attend via Zoom, I just need their name and email address. If you want to include other stuff like the planning board case number or things like that, we could add that to their name when they show up on the screen, but we'll send out those invites. They get an invite when the invite goes out a day before and an hour before the meeting starts. So there'll be plenty of reminders so they don't have to worry about finding the link right before the meeting. During the meeting, chairs we usually open up this participants window on the laptop in front of you, and you can look for, it's probably really hard for you guys to see, but there's a little blue hand, and if, a member of the public or someone who is invited as a panelist wants to speak, we try to encourage them to press this raise hand button before just unmuting themselves. Panelists or board members are set up so they can just unmute themselves at any time, but members of the public have to raise their hand. If the chair sees that during a public comment phase, we would then ask the chair, just call on them as if you were calling on them if they were in the room, and at that point we go and we unmute them and get ready to mute them if they're up to something nefarious. But that's kind of gone away. Like Zoom bombing, as it was called, is not really that popular to do anymore. People have other things to do. So yeah, just treat it like a normal meeting and we'll handle the rest. No stress with the hybrid stuff. Scheduling your meetings, as Russ mentioned, it's hugely helpful if you guys cancel a meeting. We know stuff happens. If you can send an email to me and my staff, that way we'll cancel everything and make sure we're not sitting there. And also unschedule it so that there's not just a empty spot live on the TV and people are waiting for it. We also take down the YouTube link so that people don't expect to see a replay of a meeting that wasn't there. We're also going to be working with the town manager's office and some of the chairs to maybe kind of optimize our monthly meeting schedule a little bit to kind of spread stuff out as we try to expand our coverage of meetings more. So we may, try and work with your committee on possibly moving the time or the day or, which week you meet or something like that so that we can make sure we're covering more meetings and they're not overlapping, because I know there's a bunch of meetings that kind of have conflicts over rooms and overlaps in time, and maybe you're on both those committees and kind of it makes it hard for you. So we'll be working on that going forward.
Is there a general calendar of when meetings are, so when people are planning their meetings that they can go and look to see what's already previously planned to help with that?
That we have that behind the scenes, and maybe that's something we could work with the town manager's office, maybe make that available to the chairs. But we'll be trying.
A general Google Calendar that people have access to that are the board chair board.
Yeah, I think maybe we have that for behind the scenes, and maybe it's something we can look into. How we share that out with the chair so they.
There's a calendar link on the website.
If you go on the web, it's not like a calendar, but if you go on the website, it'll list all the meetings.
Right, but those are for public. But for you guys, as you're planning, you should all be viewing what is coming in advance that's not necessarily published yet.
Yeah, we have it planned. I think Pam does a great job of that. It's probably forecasted a year in advance on all the rooms and what's being used. So we can maybe try and think of a way to make that available and kind of, because we know the first Tuesday of every month it's this committee, and third Thursday it's this one. So we can try and make that known, because we've identified slots where it's nobody's meeting. So maybe moving one committee from a double book day over to that. Great point. Overall, I just want to say, Exeter TV and myself, we're a resource for communication, so we can help highlight the work you guys are doing. For example, the tree committee, which is a subcommittee of the CONCOM, did some tree planting, and so we kind of went out, filmed the tree planting project around town, and kind of helped explain what the committee's doing. So we can advertise your events, meetings, workshops, or we've done a PSA series in the past, kind of about what the committee does to help attract new members. We use web pages, social media, short videos, and we have a email newsletter as well to help get out the word in a bunch of different ways. And if you're interested in using any of these, you can just reach out to me and we can strategize what works best for what you're trying to communicate out about. Any questions? And then the last thing I just wanted to leave you with, if you go to this part of the website, and it's also on the homepage, you can find right on the top there our new email newsletter link, so you can sign up for updates from the town in general, Parks and Rec, Public Works, and we're going to be expanding that list going forward. We do a bi-weekly email every other Friday. This Friday will be one of them, where it has a 15-minute news show that the TV station makes, and then other highlighted news pieces, and then kind of a snapshot on the next week or two of events and meetings. So kind of everything you need to know from the town every other Friday. So we're hoping that will be an informative thing, and it's a way you guys can insert blog posts into there through me to communicate out about what you're doing, or highlight important stuff you guys talked about at your meetings. Which reminds me, one other thing we're trying to do, because maybe you guys sit through the meeting and you don't want to watch someone else's 2-hour meeting. We have a new series called Meeting Minutes, where we're taking your 3-hour meeting and putting it into 3 minutes, kind of highlighting what decisions were made or things like that. No spin or anything, kind of just trying to highlight, if a majority of the meeting they talked about this, that's what we say, and invite people to go and watch the full meeting if it sparked their interest. So if you guys have a meeting that you found particularly interesting, you can reach out to us, and if we're not already planning on recapping that to help advertise what was talked about, we can look into doing one of those little videos as well. So any questions? Yeah, back in back, Bob.
Bob, could you go back to the previous slide, please?
Yes.
Yeah, what we do for you attract new members. My recollection is there used to be a section of the website that talked about openings in various...
Yeah, we do have that, and I think it's something we're planning on. Like a lot of stuff on our website, there's a lot of great stuff, and trying to get that out through social media and the newsletter and other things on a more regular basis. Because I think,
like town staff, I think a lot of the committees are understaffed.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice to have that somehow more front and center, because I know my 2 committees are both understaffed, and it'd be nice to have that out there as a recurring thing for people who are in the town.
Yeah. And kind of on the topic of recruitment, the idea that I have is the more you guys talk about what you do, and I'm happy to help with that, people might think of meetings as just what they see on TV, but I know the Concon does so much more like fun stuff with trails or all these other things, or the impact you guys have. So we can help like talk about that and make it a more well-rounded, fulfilling kind of thing serving on the board. So then hopefully that kind of communication can help attract new people too. So I know it's hard because you guys work full-time or you have lives and then you volunteer, but that's what I'm here to help communicate out, so you guys don't have to do too much work on top of all the other stuff you guys are doing. So yeah, that's about it. I'll turn it back over to Russ.
Thank you, Bob. So Bob has a new title. It's called Media Communications Coordinator, and we're very proud of that. And thank you to Bob for putting together this PowerPoint presentation. I thought it worked really well. And so he is our main resource now for all things regarding the website, regarding EXTV, regarding public meetings on EXTV. And so we're grateful to have Bob and thank him for his efforts. So thanks, Bob.
Russ, can I?
Absolutely.
Just to take this.
So just to add to that, particularly when during COVID, when all of the meetings were done via Zoom, I don't know how he did it, but Bob was able to video every single meeting and make sure that everything was on TV. And since he's assumed this new position, he just went through some of the things that he has started working on, but that's just scratching the surface. And Bob and his staff are absolutely invaluable, not only to town staff, but to our boards and committees. And I would further emphasize that if there's something that your committee or board is working on, and I'll give an example here, when the select board was working with the Public Works Department on the siphon project that maybe one or two of you heard about this past year, we worked with Bob to put together a 15-minute video. And despite all of the folks that watched every select board meeting to get updates or read the updates that were online or read what was in the Exeter newsletter, accurate or inaccurate, within a 15-minute video, Bob was able to put together an informative piece that had Mr. Dean, the Public Works Interim Director, and me. But while we were speaking for that 15 minutes and trying to, update folks, he did this awesome, I just don't know how to describe it, the awesome stuff in the background that showed pictures and actual, the work that was happening and showing statistics and showing data. So, obviously, depending upon the size of your committee, if there's something that you want above and beyond, the video of your meeting, Bob is an excellent resource, and I would highly encourage you to consider that, and also reaching across to other committees and boards. We have the communications committee right now talking understaffed. They're very understaffed, but doing some really, really great work for us, making recommendations to the select board and to Bob, and we're working on improving things as quickly as we can. But if you're a board or committee that may overlap with another, I'm thinking maybe the energy committee with sustainability committee, utilize either your town staff that's assigned to your committee or your select board to reach out to the other committee and also try to work together that way. One of the things we continue to work on is trying to find ways to make it easier for committees to sort of kind of hybrid with each other. So, but I just really, Bob, thank you for everything that you've done.
So I did want to highlight just one other point on boards, committees, and commissions, and that is when you don't have a quorum. The best practice when you don't have a quorum is to just disband and not have the meeting. So that is something that everybody in the room should be aware of, and that's an important notion. It is true, if you're a 5-member board and there are 2 of you there, it doesn't constitute a quorum. But I know sometimes boards have the propensity or they fall into maybe a habit of, if there's less than a quorum, that they end up talking about town business, but they don't make any decisions. That's really not a best practice. The best practice is to just end the meeting as a non-meeting and come back when you have a quorum. So that's just something to be aware of. Now we're into,
Sorry, Russ, can you just speak to if a committee or board member has to be absent and you can have a quorum with somebody hybrid, how that works, just with taking votes and...
Right, so basically, if you don't have a quorum physically present, or you have to have a quorum physically present at the location, okay, so that's an important piece of it. But if somebody's zooming in to a meeting, and I think we may have touched on this earlier, but just in case, if somebody's zooming in, you just have to be able to, there's a few things procedurally you need to do. One is that you have to ask the person if it was not reasonably practical for them to be at the meeting in person. That's the first thing. That's an important piece. Second piece is, if they are in a room and they're zooming in, are they alone in the room or is there somebody else there? That is another thing that's important. And actually, I had a case just today, actually. I was at the Health Trust and we had a meeting, and one of the town managers who serves on the board was in an office with an open door. And we even had to ask that question, is there anybody on the other side of that door that can hear what's going on? It's a 91A requirement, so you have to make sure that you're doing that. And then when somebody's zooming in like that, under those circumstances, all the votes that you take have to be by roll call vote at the meeting. So everything from minutes approvals to just basic business has to be via roll call if there's somebody zooming into your meeting. So that's something to be very cognizant of and make sure that you're following. So moving on to, now we're into question and answer. People have questions? Things that they're thinking about? A lot of information here tonight, I know that. It's still relatively early, so we have time for questions if people have them. Yeah, Martha?
I just want to be clear. So you're saying that to have a quorum, you have to have physical presence. But once you have a physical quorum, you can have members zoom in.
That's correct.
Right. Okay, so you can't establish a quorum and then have people leave and then zoom in. You have to have a physical present quorum during the whole meeting.
Correct.
And then people who say maybe traveling for business can zoom in and participate during the meeting.
That's correct.
Right. I know there was an effort to try to get the law changed in Concord that failed to allow Zooming, but that just didn't happen. So we still have to be operating the old-fashioned way.
Yes, and I'm looking at our state representative, Julie Coleman, over there, who's a big proponent of virtual meetings and has been working hard on that topic.
I know it makes absolutely no sense, and it's really been frustrating to try to get more people to participate.
There was a House bill and a Senate bill that were basically the same language that would allow for a quorum or 1/3 of the committee, whichever is less,
right,
to be physically present. They both failed in each of their bodies, so they did not go to the other body for anything. And because that happened, I can't bring that legislation back this year. I have to wait till 2025 if reelected. But I'll get somebody to bring it up anyway.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it is. And it's very frustrating, and when I testified at one of the Senate one, I explained that when we had the hybrid, when we were in lockdown, and we were all calling in by Zoom, we had more volunteers populate our boards and committees because of the flexibility of don't have childcare or you're traveling or something like that. And once we had to go back to in-person meetings, a lot of them just dropped right off. And that did not seem to make a dent in the brains of such people that have no local government experience.
It's really a shame because it discourages diversity and different viewpoints. So what is the reasoning behind these Luddites forbidding us to do this?
They just don't trust technology. They're Luddites. It's exactly what you said.
They won't let the legislators do any remote.
The Senate
Is it the same?
The Senate can. They can't do it at public hearings, but they can do it at their executive, where they actually make the decisions. But they have different rules in the House.
Thank you. It's such a shame, but thank you.
So, and Julie is a great resource as someone to, as you are all on boards and committees, and if you feel strongly about this issue, definitely go through Julie for that, because she's been our point person in Concord on this, along with our delegation, but really, as a local select board member, really understands the importance of this issue. So definitely utilize Julie as a resource for it.
Thank you.
All right, so we're on to the rest of the agenda.
Question?
Oh, I'm sorry, Lanny. Go right ahead.
You talked about texting. How about the person that has a laptop with them and does a little email while things are going on? This is my concern. You go on the website and go shopping. I'm not saying it's happening, but I know it happens. Obviously, because people depend so much on it. Is there anything that deals with the use of a laptop we need to be concerned with?
Again, best practices, keeping to, if you're using a laptop for the purposes of the meeting, accessing the packet, making notes on the packet, if you can do that. Those are the kinds of things that you should be using it for, obviously. I'm not aware of any court cases that involved the subpoenaing or the taking of a laptop as part of an open government meeting. But I would imagine that if that were to come up, that could be something that would be in play. So it's something to be conscious of. And yeah, people shouldn't be shopping during meetings. That goes without saying, right? So, but
I would say it's a matter of courtesy to your fellow board members and to the job that you have to do at hand, that if you are really not in the space of the meeting, not taking part of it, then maybe you should reconsider attending or your position.
Well, it makes handling paperwork much quicker and quieter.
You have to be working.
You got to go to minutes to this page and that page. And,
right. Now, if you're using it for the purpose of the meeting, that's fine. Yeah. But it's really disrespectful if you start going off in your party list.
Yeah, and again, I think the important element of that, along with the attentiveness element, is the fact that in an adversarial situation, I've seen 91A requests that ask for everything under the sun. They ask for emails. They ask for any kind of communication. And 91A says basically any kind of communication, electronic or print or otherwise, is subject to discovery under 91A. So again, you just need to be aware of that. Your texts or anything that you do at a meeting can be construed as being part of that meeting, depending upon what the request is and how it comes across. So it's all important to know.
Those are discoverable not just during a meeting. If people are communicating outside of a meeting, it's discoverable as well.
Right.
It's town business, so keep that in mind.
Chris?
Is there a time limit for that discovery period? Like how long should you hold on to things?
So I can speak to emails, and I can speak to text too, actually, to some degree, and say that an email, if it's legally deleted from your file, then it doesn't become discoverable if it's deleted. And that means deleted. It means put in the trash and fully deleted. Same with the text message. So if it doesn't exist, the way the law is written today, and again, this is a great segue because next week I encourage you all to come to the RSA 91A training because these questions are great for the NHMA to be able to answer those as well. But again, my understanding is that if it's legally deleted, then it's not discoverable. If that makes sense.
So essentially, you're recommending burner phones for all the...
Full disclosure, I have hundreds of thousands of emails in my email, and
it's saved on our server.
And they're saved on the server, and the way I operate is I always think of something going out into the public eye anyway, and it's just something that you live with, and you've got to work with it. So that's what I do. So we have any other questions before we move to the next
I guess
item?
in the same vein, if there's handwritten notes that you're taking during a meeting or checking off criteria and best practices for retaining any of that, or is it not communications?
If it's your personal notes that you take for making your decision, then they're your personal notes. We might get a request for anything that was done, anything that was said or written
It's more like communication, right?
Between, so if you slid someone a note, that would be covered.
Yeah, but, I mean, we've been asked, do you give us everything that you've ever communicated about this person? And I look at my phone, my email, and I have that, or I have nothing. But I might have written down something in the decision made, and so I would have to turn that in.
Yeah, so a good example are minutes. Initially, minutes are typically taken in a draft form. Sometimes they're handwritten in draft form. If we get a request for minutes and they're not transcribed into like a Word document, then we actually have to turn over the handwritten notes to those minutes. Now that's minutes. That's not the same exactly as communicating during a meeting, but so it depends on the circumstance. That's how it would be looked at. And again, whenever we get a right to know request, what our process is, we always go through our legal counsel. They review what the request is, and then they feed back to us on what we need to produce in order to be compliant with that request. So if any of you on boards or committees get one of those requests, we are here to support you and help you through that process. So just remember that we're here as a resource to help. So moving ahead, so the 91A training is next week, October 18th, 2023, and that's at 6:30 p.m. in this room. So spread the word. Hopefully we can get as many people out for that as possible. The next topic we had on the agenda was review of board training needs, and that's really an open discussion item. How many here feel as though the training being offered by the town is, at this point, is adequate or meets standards, I guess I would say? Maybe a little.
If you're including what we're doing tonight as an example?
Yes, that would be an example. Okay, that's good. And I know certain boards have limited, I know the budgets are limited, but you have budgets to take advantage of some training. I know conservation, I think, has some. Zoning may have some as well, planning. So we want to continue that and make sure that that's part of your existence as a committee member, that you have access to training as you need it. So if the training is inadequate or you feel as though there could be more done, let us know and we can try to make that part of the budget going forward. You know, we're definitely supportive of that and want to be supportive of it. Julie?
Yeah, for the land use boards, the New Hampshire, let's see, what's their new name, latest name, Office of Planning and Development, has online training for planning boards, zoning boards. I still haven't put the HGC in there, but it's really quite extensive. They have the 91A training. They also have what's new in the state law, what's changed this year. I don't know, and you'll get notices, the land use boards anyway, anything that has to do with the planning building department, get notices of when there are conferences and things like that. And I really strongly recommend that you take advantage of these. When I started out on the zoning board and went to every conference. There was a spring conference every year, and I learned more than the people that had been on the board for 7 years knew, and brought the latest laws to the zoning board because they haven't been kept up to date. So it's really an important resource for you all.
Say the name of the office.
The Office of Planning and Development.
And for zoning, I know our farm is really good at sending out training opportunities that as a new zoning board member, I wouldn't necessarily know where to look to get additional training. So that's something that we rely on those.
Yes.
It's not so easy what opportunities there are for the other boards and committees because they're not covered by a State Department or staff.
Yeah, like I said, sometimes we're not aware of training opportunities that are out there. So, I look at a committee like facilities as an example. That's not readily apparent necessarily as far as what kind of board training would be available for a facilities committee, but I want to send the message out to the group that we're open for that and want to hear about training opportunities. So the more we can learn from you all as far as what's out there, the more responsive we can be when it comes to budget time and kind of finding the resources to be able to take advantage of that. And also, I'd encourage everybody to look at the NHMA website as well for online training. There's a lot of good online training webinars that they do on an ongoing basis, and that those are easily things that you can sign up for and go through. So we'd encourage that as well.
Russ, on that front, I think the town has a membership, but when you have to log in to get access to those things.
You do, yes.
So if folks here want to log in and look at the newsletter, the bulletin that comes out every week or so, they're going to need to know how to do that.
Okay, so we'll take that under advisement from tonight. I've got to do a little bit of digging on the website of NHMA, and we'll get the word out to people. We have you all on a listserv, so we can get you that information. Thank you, Julie. All right, so the next item we have is to schedule a follow-up meeting. Typically, we've been meeting October, February timeframe. So if people can mark down, I believe it will be the second Wednesday in February, and don't have that exact date in front of me.
It'll be the 14th.
The 14th.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah, we So either the 7th or the 21st?
So we could schedule for the 7th. We did February 8th last winter.
Okay.
So we could do February 7th. We can put that down. That's right after deliberative session. So we could have lots of things to talk about. So February 7th, 2024 would be our next meeting. And is there any other business? Anything else?
I'd suggest too, in the meantime, between now and let's say early January, if there are any topics that you would like on the agenda, or if there's anything that your board or committee needs that maybe we can address, please send agenda ideas to us, because we're doing this for you. So anything and everything, please let us know.
I can think of something right now. We've talked before about onboarding new members to a committee or commission or board. That the chair, I think we mentioned it here, that the chair sit down with a new member and bring them into how things go, what are our responsibilities, what resources do we have. What I'd like to hear from you all is, has that been successful, and or what materials do you think you need to have? Once you've been on the board and experienced, gone through cases or projects or whatnot, things that you feel you should have or have access to, or just some critique, I guess is what I'm looking for in the process.
I have two comments on that. Both the boards I started, one was a brand new, sustainability was a brand new committee, so it really didn't have much resource behind it to sort of kind of discover as we went along. With budget, again, it was great having such a deep so much experience already there on the board, so it's actually pretty easy to follow along. I'm wondering, when the invites went out for this training, for example, the last few times, I think it was really targeted towards chairs and vice chairs. It would be so helpful, I think, to rotate through your new people into this room every 6 months, because there's, and you lose that, you save that loss in that sort of telephone operation where you're sending us a way to take this information to disseminate it to them, and something's going to get lost. I'd love to have that invite open to just all members. Even if it requires an RSVP based on seating or whatever, just to make sure it fits.
Yeah, and I know when we put this out, we put it out with the intention that all the board members of each committee would be notified and invited to this tonight.
We weren't.
So
I wasn't.
You didn't get there.
I was invited because my chair couldn't make it.
I see.
And I've chaired for 3 years, and I've only been invited to one of these.
And that's something we can work on that, because emails went out to the chairs and vice chairs with the understanding that spread the word. And then as select board reps, we were supposed to spread the word at our meetings that, hey, you know, an invitation went out to chair and vice chair, but everybody is welcome. And I know I personally made sure that Bob got, because I know
Yeah,
it
he
fell apart,
forwarded me
but-
your email, but, you know,
So,
like I said, I've been a chair for 3 years in the past, and
But
I've
that's-
only been invited to one.
and that would be yours, because you don't have, there's no select board rep there. I think that's probably one of the only boards or committees where there's no rep there.
I'm not complaining, I'm just saying, like,
No, but
if you
that's
want to
okay.
think about
Yeah.
getting the word all the way down.
And that's the important part of these meetings is the takeaways, so thank you for bringing that up. It's appreciated for certain. So.
Yeah, is there a listserv of everybody? Because it does seem like there are some communications that get sent to chairs and then I have to remember to forward it on.
There is a listserv of everyone. We do have that. So
it just seemed like, why not just invite everybody?
Invite everybody to the party next time.
Yeah.
Directly.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Without going through the chairs and the vice chairs.
Right. So Bob, I think that list is getting compiled, right? Because if we have, remember, because I fill in the communications committee sometimes for Molly when she can't make it, and I believe that came up during.
I know we have all the chairs, and we probably are expanding that
It's
list.
working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Pam?
I do have every single board member's address, phone number, email address.
Yeah.
So yes, I do have all of you.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Anything else for tonight? Any other?
Are these materials posted somewhere? Because they're helpful somewhat in paper, but if we want to report to our committees and other people who couldn't make it tonight, I'd like to share, like, this is pretty good.
Heroes Cup is really good, and it supports a good cause.